What is up, survivors? For today's mod review, we're going to be talking about the Ark Un-natural Evolved mod. This mod adds kind of like a dino hybrid idea with some of the tames that are currently in the Ark universe, as well as adding some mini bosses to the current game, and then on top of it, reworking some of the creatures that are already in here. So let's get into it now. Most of the creatures that you can actually tame are right out here in front of me. We're going to talk about them and how they work. And yes, that is a flying squid. It's a long story, but well, not really long story, but we'll get to it. Anyway, so again, this mod adds a lot of different creatures that got tweaked and changed up a little bit. And then also, like I said, reworking some of the current dinos and adding some mini bosses. So what we have here are the animals that you can tame. For taming principles, pretty much everything we're going to go over is a not standard knockout, feed it with either berries or meat depending on what its diet is, sort of thing, and that's it, with the exception of this dude here, which we will go over first. This is the macro. I mean, you guys know I can't pronounce it right, so we're going to call it the macro. That's what we're going to call it. This is like a crazy, I don't know, it's got like, I mean, I see like Stego, Kentra, Rex, Giga. I see a bunch of stuff wrapped up into this guy, maybe even a little bit of Spino. The macro is probably one of the bigger names on this mod, I think. It's pretty vicious. It has a lot of different attacks. This creature has pretty high stats from which you can obviously tell. Most of these stats are stock. It's really just the melee damage that I upgraded just to see what kind of melee damage it would put out. But you have a bunch of different attacks from this guy. You have a left click, which is just your standard bite attack. Which has it has a chance of hitting multiple things. Like when you attack with this, he'll do like a claw swipe instead, and the claw swipe does like a bleed attack on top of it. There's no like rhyme or reason. It's very much random when you're attacking with your primary attack, whether or not it's just going to do a standard bite or the claw attack, and that's pretty much how that works. The right click is actually a roar ability, which does like actually does like a knockback. But then also on top of it does damage, as you can see. Will actually do a little bit of damage on top of it. You can stun creatures and it debuffs them for a certain amount of time, kind of like the UD. It's like a stun and then a debuff roar on top of it. Pretty insane buff. The C, let me get back on this guy. So C attack should be like a tail whip. Yeah, so it's a tail whip, kind of an AoE attack is pretty much how that works. X should be like a barrage. Yeah, like he throws all these rocks out, like scoops these rocks out and shoots them out around him. There should be like a tail swipe, like a normal, oh no, that's a stomp attack. It's like an AoE stomp attack. And then what else do we have? That's Q that does that actually. And then left control does a tail swipe. And then right control looks like it just does like an animation. There's a lot of controls to this guy. This is an interesting tame. Does a lot of different damage, does a lot of attacks. It's immune to bleed, it's immune to stun, acid burn, like all that stuff. It doesn't really care. It's a super aggressive creature. You'll find them spawning out here and they're pretty insane. There's a lot of other abilities too, but I don't want to spend too much time on either one of these creatures specifically, so we'll leave a link to the Steam Workshop page in the description so you guys can check that out. There's a separate tab that specifically talks about all the crazy abilities that these guys have. They look pretty cool. It's pretty awesome. They do have their own, or no, I'm sorry, they take the U-Type saddle, so they take the same saddle that the UD does. You can just craft that and put them on top of there. All in all, it's a pretty crazy concept. This is a pretty nasty thing. I mean, the sculpt's definitely unique. It's not something that I would have seen anywhere else before. Not sure what's going on with the arm. The right arm's like a little twitchy. I'm not sure what's going on there, but other than that, pretty cool mount. Definitely a beast, not something you would mess around with. Taming these guys is the only one that's really different that I've seen so far. Everything else over here is pretty much a knockout tame. You use meat regardless of what you see over there, with the exception of the flying Kraken. But so with this guy, you actually have to make these special rockets. Let me see if I can find one in here so you can see it. They're skinned to look like normal rockets, but they specifically say they're for the macro. Yeah, so you make these rockets to use. Essentially, in the wild, these guys will pull that roar ability at you, and when they do, you shoot them with these rockets, it'll knock them out, and then you can tame them with normal meat, essentially. So nothing too crazy different, but yeah, the macro is, this guy is pretty vicious. Pretty vicious. Moving over, the micro Skrillex is pretty funny. They're kind of like a micro T-Rex. It's smaller. It's about the size of, I don't know, it's a little bit bigger than a Raptor. I wouldn't say quite, maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's as big as a Carno, but it moves a little bit faster. The turning radius isn't like fantastic on this guy. Left click is just a bite, but it also increases like a bleed, but it will do like, it'll heal itself from fighting things, kind of like how the RG does. Like it'll actually get a heal benefit when it harvests corpses. You do have the option to jump. The turning radius I've noticed is different when you're standing still. Like if you're sprinting, the turning radius is a little wide, but if you're just walking normally, it's actually not that bad. It's actually a little bit better, so you do get a little bit of maneuverability around it. You have a right attack, a roar attack that you can use as well. Not a big deal. You can roar while you're moving too, which is kind of funny. Anyway, yeah, essentially it's like a micro T-Rex that does a little bit of a bleed damage is really what this guy is. No saddle for this guy. It doesn't look like anything else really has a saddle, at least not what I could tell so far, at least not yet anyway. I mean, maybe we'll see it eventually, but not right now. The Hermitar, which is essentially a Karkinos with this awesome trike, like shell head on top of it, like definitely the head of a giant trike on top of it. It's pretty cool. It's like a huge angry hermit crab. These are interesting. You still get the claw, the little claw jab, which you can't really see because the shell's in the way. You still have that, and then the right click is like a slam of the claw. It looks like it does have a cooldown because the claw slam actually does a stun, so you won't be able to just mash it. And then every now and then it'll actually do both claws instead of just one. You have the sweep attack, which kind of like does this like back and forth. Yeah, there we go. It's just a front sweep, like an AoE slight cooldown on that one. And then you have a spinning attack, which will hit a bunch of different creatures, which is great for crowd control. This spin attack will hit everything that's coming around it, which is pretty impressive. Definitely a heavier hitting version of the normal Karkinos that we're used to seeing. There is a Dragon Hunter variant to these guys. It's kind of like a world boss, like a mini boss that you'll find out that you can't actually tame, but you can fight. So what these guys do is they naturally have a damage resistance and then reflect some of the damage back to the attacker as well because of the shell that they have over top of them. The regular one will get like a 20% armor increase. The boss variant actually has a 50% one. So pay attention to that if you're out there fighting them, and there is a difference between the two. Might be one of my favorite ones. I always like the Karkinos though, so maybe that's why, but it's an interesting concept. I like the idea of like, I don't know, like a giant hermit crab sort of look. It's interesting. Going over here is the Rumblehorn. The Rumblehorn is essentially a small rhino. It's what we're looking at. Like, it just doesn't have any horns yet, but it doesn't have any horns on it, but it's essentially a small rhino. Now, obviously, there's a weird, I'm hovering way above the body of this guy. I've tried to use other saddles with them. They don't seem to work, so I don't think they actually use any saddle. But then the mount option is really weird, as we can see. I'm not sure what's going on there. Maybe that'll get fixed later on. But that's pretty much it. It's kind of, like I said, it's kind of like a woolly rhino, but it's smaller. You have a left click bite, and then you have a right click headbutt, which is pretty cool. And then you actually have a taunt option with C that you can taunt creatures to come after you, which is kind of cool. They do get a herd bonus, but it's not like incredibly big. These are like early game tames essentially. It's kind of just early game tames is pretty much what these guys are. I'm not sure what's going on with the saddle, and I'm not sure what's going on with the horn either. I don't know what's going on with, maybe there's some work that needs to be done, or maybe something's wrong with my game with the mod. I'm not certain, but it definitely looks a little off to me. But it pretty much works like an early game herbivore to grab pretty much. Getting into some other ones, this is the Werox, which is obviously a play off of the mutated Ferox in the big form. It's supposed to be kind of like a werewolf vampire-esque sort of interesting critter. It has a left attack, which does bleed when you attack things with it. The right click is a claw swipe. It inflicts bleed and then has like a chance of doing like this crazy combo. Like when it cools down, I'll try to hit it again. But you'll be doing this, and then all of a sudden, between the right clicks, it will just go ham and start like combo hitting something. There's no real... Doesn't seem like there's any rhyme or reason about when this was going to happen. I'm trying to hit it. So I'm trying to get it so you guys can see it, but I'm not seeing it. Maybe I have to actually be hitting a target. I don't know. But basically, it'll do massive swipes back to back to back to back to back to back. It's essentially what we're doing. It still has jump, and it still does like the bouncing, like the jump benefits that the regular Ferox does. So you have that option. You can tie the jumps together. The jump animation obviously is a little weird. Like, it doesn't have the same jump animation that the regular Ferox does. It doesn't look like, but it does operate much like a regular Ferox. C attack with this guy does like a blood spit thing, which essentially works like the bleed attack from like the blood wyverns. So we'll hit it here. I might need to get more stamina first. There we go. So it does a roar, and then it does this, but then it'll target something and drain the health just like a blood wyvern does. So same kind of effect, but it's really hard to tell what you're targeting with it. That's my only gripe with that one. It's a little bit hard to tell. The jump animations is a little weird, but all in all, it's kind of a cool concept. I like the idea of like a werewolf. It's kind of neat. And the bleed attacks kind of work with it as well. And it definitely looks cool. I like the color scheme, the red eyeballs, the animations are pretty neat. Going over to the Dodo Terra Raptor. This is like a smaller Dodo Rex, and so I guess that's kind of what we were going after, but obviously you can see like a little bit of Terra bird involved in this as well. This is an interesting critter too. Left click does a bite. It penetrates armor like a Carno. It does have really fast attack speed, as you can tell. Like, it is super fast attack speed. Right click is like an acid barrage. It like slows enemies down when you hit it with this. But it doesn't seem like, it seems like, I don't know, the aiming, I guess, because there's no crosshairs, a little odd on it. It doesn't seem to work all the time. It does, like I said, it does slow animals down. It does have a taunt ability as well. It's basically you'll find these guys out in the wild just like you will everything else. It doesn't take any, like barely any falling damage. You can jump off pretty high stuff with this, but the thing I have noticed is like when you jump, it stops in place and like skids a little bit, and if you're jumping from a high place, it'll do the same thing. Like normal jumps, you'll be able to jump it like falls over and then gets back up, so you can't like just consistently jump over and over again. That's not going to work well for you. But obviously the bite ability is pretty effective, and the attack speed is pretty effective, and if you can get the acid burn to actually hit the target, that's it'll slow your creatures down pretty well. It looks like these kind of take something a little bit kind of like the wild gigas. Like wild ones of these guys are going to be a lot better than the tame ones for the most part. At least that appears to be the way it works, but other than that, that's pretty much what we're looking at. The Terra Raptor, the Dodo Terra Raptor, which is an interesting concept. I mean, I like the idea of having something bigger, something a little bit smaller than a Dodo Rex to be kind of wandering around, and the sculpt does look pretty good in my opinion. No saddle for these guys again, and again, all this stuff is like knockout carnivore taming style things. The giant rat looks to me exactly like a roll rat. I'm not sure if there's something different, maybe I'm missing it, but it does look like just a roll rat to me, and you don't need a saddle to ride this guy. The giant rat operates a lot differently though. It does not operate like the traditional roll rat. It doesn't get a saddle and go rolling around. It doesn't burrow in the ground. It's more combat related, really. So it does have a bite, and it inflicts like it slows animals down when it bites them. Of course, it just killed that. My Rumblehorn was killed by a Dilophosaur. Really? Yeah, Dilophosaur over here killing rhinos. Rude. Totally did. Probably because I have everything set to passive over here. And this Dilophosaur just didn't care. Sorry, makes quick work to you. You're done. But as you can see, the bite attack is super fast. Like, the bite attack is super, super, super fast with this thing. Doesn't do a whole lot of damage, but again, attack speed, super, super fast. The other option with this guy is to do like a right click, and it does like this body slam AoE, and it just kind of flops on the ground, and it does like a small damage AoE effect as well, which is a little weird because it looks like you can see it kind of goes like head first down. And it does have a jump option, which is pretty cool. It does have a jump option, so I mean, I think that's a plus. Most creatures, I think, should have a jump. Sometimes I look at creatures and they don't have a jump option. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but it looks like it does here. So, anyhow, that is the giant rat. From what I can tell, kind of like, I don't know, a bit more combat-oriented roll rat is essentially what we're looking at here. But again, the skin to me looks the same. I can't really see any difference. Maybe it's a little bit smaller, maybe? Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's a little bit smaller. The Colossi, these are kind of like rock golem-esque creatures, but they still knock out and tame with meat from what I can understand. There are a couple different versions of this guy. There's the tempered, the fire, the ice, and the arc tempered. So really the attacks and statistics on these guys are relatively the same, just with a little tweaking. So the tempered has just an arm smash, but then it also, like, the tempered's kind of like the electrical, I guess, of all of them. So we'll get on this guy so you can check it out. So the left is just a smash attack. The right click does this charge up, and then it does like an AoE attack, and it just shocks down and electrocutes targets that are nearby. And then C actually does like this arm thrust that will knock creatures back when they're near it. Now, that is essentially the same thing that goes down the line with all these guys. The difference is just the type of damage. So obviously this guy does a fire damage, this guy does an ice damage. The Ark Tempered is a little bit different because it does like this rampage with the right attack where it just starts like wailing on stuff. So if I come out here and show you, let me get in like K mode maybe. Yeah, so he charges up and then he'll smash stuff on the ground and then like pound his chest like a gorilla. It's kind of crazy. Which they kind of move like gorillas. I don't know how I feel about it, but it is kind of how they, well, I just hit the button again, hold on. They do kind of look like, I mean, they kind of function like giant rock gorillas. I mean, it's kind of how they run, which I thought was a little weird at first, but then when I really kind of understood the concept of these guys, I guess it kind of makes sense. They still harvest stone and stuff for you too, like rock golems do, so you definitely have that benefit. They'll actually infight, they'll fight each other a little bit too, but it looks like they do have different temperaments as well. So it looks like the tempered one down here is usually pretty calm unless it's provoked, or it will aggro after some of his other guys. And then obviously like the fire and ice are immune to fire and ice, and the Ark Tempered is immune to like frozen and electrocution stuff. So they all have a reduced damage of 25% of the incoming damage, but it looks like they take extra damage from explosions. They took like a little over double damage from explosions, so you might want to watch that as well. But again, these guys are, I don't know, kind of like lesser rock golems a little bit. Maybe a bit more mobile, but not quite as tough. As you can see, as a level 1, we're looking at the stats right here, and they're pretty comparable across the board. I don't know. I like the concept of these guys. I'm not sure. I'm up in the air about them. I like the concept and the different elements of them, kind of like something a little bit different than the rock golem that we're used to seeing. Something a bit more agile, I guess. I don't know. I think maybe I have to play around with it a bit more before I have a full opinion. The Sky Kraken. This, I'm not sure about this. This is essentially a squid that just flies. That's what it is. It's a squid that flies, and we can hop on it, but it operates like a squid and it just flies. Now, I guess the idea, at least the lore behind this, is that it uses some sort of gas to propel itself instead of like ink and stuff, but I don't know. There's no animations to change it up at all. It's the same sculpt. I'm not sure how. I think it's an interesting concept. The execution, I don't know. I hate bashing people that make mods because this stuff takes a lot of time. But this, to me, this kind of just looks like a squid just out of water that flies around. Oddly enough, you can also make this guy in the water too, which kind of makes the current squid null and void if you're using this mod, really. You just kind of just use this one everywhere. It still has the tentacle grab. It can grab smaller targets. It can grab things and attack like normal. Like, it doesn't really change anything. It still attacks the same way. Obviously, they just fly around in the sky instead, but that's pretty much it. The taming method for these guys essentially is the same way you would tame normal Tusos. I don't know how you would be able to tame this thing, though. I mean, I guess with some sort of flying gear tech suit, maybe some grapple hooks and like parachutes. I think that'd probably be the only way, because it would need to grab an animal and you would need to get to the beak to feed a black pearl. So could be a risky tame for sure, but it is an option. I would like to see maybe some work in progress done on this guy, mainly because I think it's, like I said, I think it's an interesting concept. I think if you just change the look of the body up a little bit more, or maybe added some effects, I think that would be a pretty cool mod. Honestly, I think it would be interesting. An interesting concept anyway, for sure. Maybe, I don't know, maybe change the size up, maybe make him a little bit smaller. I don't know. There's a reason why I'm not a mod creator, you know? There's too many ideas and I don't know how to implement this stuff. And again, I don't mean to bash people that bash this mod specifically, or any other mods we do reviews on. Those are questions I have that other people may have, so that's why I'm putting them out there. That is pretty much it as far as the tameable stuff is concerned. Now, again, we'll leave a link to the Steam Workshop page in the description of the video, because there are a lot of tweaks for current creatures that are out there. Are you really trying to go over here? You know what? Is that what you're trying to do? Listen, man, I'm just trying to shoot a video. There's no need for that. We're not doing it. You just got admin. I'm shooting a video. You don't need to pull that crap. I've had enough stuff trying to die over here. Anyway. That is pretty much it of the creatures that you can spawn. There are a few others that roam around on the map as well. Oh, actually, you know what? Where is he at? There he is. There he is. The Taurus. You know, I can't pronounce anything in here. Forgot. This is probably one of the mascots as well, as far as this mod goes. This is an interesting concept. This is a creature that I like. So I think there's a bit of originality in this one, which is why I kind of like it so much more. The left click has a normal bite attack. The right click does actually have a headbutt, but it does like slowly like a debuff for a little bit, like it'll bleed the target a little bit. You have a roar that can increase your movement speed. And like it increases your movement speed and then increases your damage while you have this roar optional, and it's like a toggle roar, but then when you run out of stamina it goes away, so it's constantly draining stamina, and you'll be able to just basically power up until your stamina runs down, and then you have to stop. But this creature looks a little bit different. I mean, it definitely looks like it's a bit of this and a bit of that, but it's an interesting concept, and it's a creature in and of its own, which I kind of like. It does have a tail spin, which I think is left control. Yeah, it does have a tail spin as well. This is like what I like seeing, something like the back row, and then this guy that I'm riding, even the Hermitar, and to be most of this stuff, honestly, the stuff that I think a lot of times when I see creatures, especially creature mods, we want to see something a little bit different than what's currently there, and it doesn't look like I'm seeing that with some things. Like their mechanics might be a little bit different, but aesthetically they look the same, like the giant rat and the Kraken. Those are probably my least two favorites, and that's really just because there's nothing that really aesthetically doesn't really set them apart, which is a little weird to me. But all in all, obviously there was a lot of work done in here, and it's interesting concepts, and I think the mod creator could, I don't know, I think I'm really hoping that they keep updating and keep working with this one, because I think it's one of those creature mods that has a lot of potential. Just top it off, let's go out here and see if I can find any of them. There are world bosses out here. You will see these grand chimeras that are roaming around out here that you can actually fight as world bosses, like mini world bosses. And then you'll also see these grand obsidian wyverns out here as well. Typically they're on the ground though, they don't fly around too much, which is kind of interesting. But so you have many bosses that will be out here spawning on you as well, so you want to watch all that. Be very careful out here. I'm having some over spawning issues with it on Valguera, but this is also single player, and I haven't changed it to the INI, so it very well could be the reason. It could be my single player or the INI configs. The boss creatures out here, where'd he go? The boss creatures out here are not tameable though, so they're just world bosses. That's the whole purpose to them. All in all, there is a lot of reworks to a lot of the original creatures that you're gonna see out here as well, to include like the T-Rexes and Stegos and Diplos and Carnos. There's a lot of reworks of current creatures out there, so again, we'll have a link to the description in the video so you guys can check that one out, because it's a full list of all the changes and how they work. Most of it is like little TLC tweaks that make a lot of sense. Every now and then there's some stuff in there that I think might have been just kind of for a fun sort of just to see what would happen sort of issue, or sort of change rather. But all in all, I think that the TLC tweaks on the creatures just kind of make sense after you read through them. But anyway, that is pretty much it. I'm split with this one. While I think it's fun now to use some of this stuff, I think if further progression is made with this mod, it would be more fun. I like a lot of the concepts of where the stuff is going. I think it probably needs to be tweaked a little bit more. The other thing that I've noticed, at least for me anyway, is that none of these creatures can really have any saddles, so that means 9 times out of 10 you're taking raw damage when you're out there fighting, which kind of sucks. Anyway, guys, that is it for today's mod review. I hope you guys did enjoy it. I think you should probably give this one a chance, but more importantly, I think you should keep your eye on it. So I think this one, again, if the mod creator keeps up with the updates on this one and keeps pumping out stuff and we're reworking the stuff that's here, I think there's a possibility for this mod to really be really fun and get a lot of traffic. Anywho, guys, hope you liked the video. If you did, hit that like button, hit that sub button. I will see you all on the next one.